Jennifer sat cross-legged on the living room floor, a mountain of laundry piled around her. The faint hum of the washing machine echoed from the hallway, blending with the soft murmur of a podcast playing from her phone. Outside, the December wind rattled the windows, carrying with it the sharp chill of winter. Lily and Ethan, her 6-year-old twins, were in their room building a fort out of blankets and couch cushions, their laughter drifting down the hall. Her phone buzzed on the carpet beside her, the screen lighting up with a notification. Jennifer wiped her hands on her sweatpants and picked it up, expecting a reminder about tomorrow's school pickup or maybe a text from Michael about dinner. Instead, it was a message from her mom. "Hey, sweetie, just a heads up, Christmas is going to be simple this year. Money's tight, so we won't be doing big gifts. Just the essentials. Love you." Jennifer stared at the screen, her fingers tightening around the fabric of the shirt she'd been folding. Simple. Essentials. The words felt heavy, like stones sinking into her chest. She wasn't surprised her always been practical, frugal to a fault, but something about the message felt off, final, like a decision had been made without her. She typed out a quick reply, her thumbs moving mechanically over the screen. "Of course, no worries. The kids will understand." As she hit send, a knot formed in her stomach. She set the phone down and picked up another shirt, folding it with more force than necessary. The kids would understand, she told herself. They didn't need much, a few small gifts, a tree with homemade ornaments, and the magic of the season. But still, the thought of a simple Christmas stung. "Everything okay?" Michael's voice came from the doorway, pulling her out of her thoughts. He leaned against the frame, a dish towel slung over his shoulder, his dark hair slightly messy from running his hands through it. Jennifer hesitated, then held up her phone. "My mom texted, Christmas is going to be simple this year. No big gifts, just the essentials." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Essentials? What does that even mean?" "I don't know," Jennifer said, tossing the folded shirt onto the pile. "Probably socks. Or toothbrushes." Michael chuckled, but his expression softened as he stepped into the room. "Hey, it's not the end of the world. We'll make it special for the kids like we always do." "I know," Jennifer said, forcing a smile. "It's just, I don't want them to feel like they're missing out." "They won't," Michael said firmly, sitting down beside her. "They've got us. That's all they need." Jennifer nodded, leaning into him as he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She wanted to believe him, and for a moment she did. But as she glanced at her phone, the unease lingered. That night, after the kids were in bed and the house was quiet, Jennifer sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, her phone glowing softly in front of her. She opened the text thread with her mom and read the message again. "Money's tight. Just the essentials." She thought about calling, about asking for an explanation, but what would she say? Her parents weren't the type to justify their decisions. They expected understanding, compliance. With a sigh, she locked her phone and set it aside. She told herself it didn't matter. Christmas wasn't about gifts. It was about family. But as she climbed into bed beside Michael, the wind howling outside, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, something she couldn't quite name. 2 days after Christmas, Jennifer sat on the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, scrolling absently through her phone. The living room was quiet, the only sounds the soft hum of the dishwasher and the occasional clatter of toys as Lily and Ethan played in their room. Michael was in the kitchen, fixing a leaky faucet, his tools clinking against the metal pipes. Jennifer had been aimlessly flipping through Instagram, half-heartedly liking photos of friends' holiday celebrations, when a post from her sister Claire stopped her cold. "Best Christmas ever." The caption was accompanied by a carousel of photos. The first image was their parents' living room, transformed into a winter wonderland. A massive tree stood in the corner, its branches weighed down with twinkling lights and shiny ornaments. Beneath it, a mountain of gifts spilled onto the floor, wrapped in elegant silver and gold paper. Jennifer's breath caught in her throat as she swiped to the next photo. Her nieces, Claire's 2 girls, sat in the center of the room, surrounded by brand name presents. Designer sneakers, high-end electronics, and what looked like a brand new tablet in her youngest niece's hands. She froze, her heart pounding. They hadn't been invited. No one had mentioned a family Christmas gathering. For them, Christmas had been quiet, just Michael, the twins, and her eating a simple dinner at home, exchanging modest gifts and watching Christmas movies on the couch. no grandparents, no cousins, no big celebration. Because apparently they weren't part of the family this year. Jennifer scrolled through the photos again, her stomach twisting into knots. The timestamp was clear this had happened this Christmas. She checked her messages, her texts, her email, nothing from her mom, nothing from her dad. No invite, no explanation. Michael, she called, her voice trembling. He appeared in the doorway, a wrench in his hand. What's wrong? She handed him her phone without a word. He scrolled through the photos, his expression darkening. They lied to you? He said finally, his voice low and steady. Jennifer nodded, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. They told me they couldn't afford Christmas for us, but they could afford all this for Claire's kids. Michael sat down beside her, setting the wrench on the coffee table. I'm sorry, Jen. This is messed up. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. Did they even think about Lily and Ethan? Did they even care? Michael didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said enough. Jennifer stared at the photos again, her chest aching. She thought about the small, carefully wrapped gifts under their tree, the ones she and Michael had saved for all year. She thought about the way Lily's face had lit up when she opened her new art supplies, the way Ethan had hugged his dinosaur plushie like it was the most precious thing in the world. And then she thought about her nieces surrounded by luxury, their smiles wide and carefree. What do I do? She whispered, her voice breaking. Michael reached for her hand, his grip firm. You don't have to do anything right now. Just breathe. But Jennifer couldn't breathe. The betrayal sat in her chest, heavy and suffocating. She opened the text thread with her mom and stared at the last message she sent. Of course, no worries. The kids will understand. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to type something, anything, to demand an explanation, to scream at them for lying, for excluding her, for making her children believe that Christmas had to be small and simple while somewhere else they were celebrating with a tree full of gifts and laughter. But she didn't. Instead, she opened her contacts, found her parents' numbers, and blocked them. There, she said, setting her phone down. I'm done. Michael squeezed her hand. You sure? Jennifer nodded, but the decision left her feeling hollow rather than relieved. The days after Christmas passed in a blur. Jennifer went through the motions, cooking meals, cleaning up, playing with Lily and Ethan, but she felt hollow. The betrayal sat in her chest like a stone, heavy and unyielding. She checked her phone constantly, half expecting her mom to call with some excuse, some explanation to soften the blow. But there was nothing, just silence. Then, a week into the new year, her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Claire. I saw that you blocked Mom and Dad. What's wrong with you? Jennifer stared at the message, her pulse hammering in her ears. She let the phone ring when Claire called, then again and again, until finally another text came through. You're overreacting. It's not a big deal. Jennifer's hands shook as she typed her response. They told me they couldn't afford Christmas for my kids, but could afford a full celebration for yours. Explain that to me. The reply came almost instantly. Mom and Dad just wanted to do something nice for the girls. You're being dramatic. Jennifer felt her stomach drop. Dramatic, overreacting. The words stung, but they also clarified something she'd been avoiding. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't just about Christmas. This was how they saw her less than, the afterthought, the child who didn't matter as much. Michael found her sitting on the edge of their bed, gripping her phone like it might break in her hands. They didn't even try to deny it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He sat beside her, his presence steady and grounding. They knew what they were doing, Jen, and they don't care that it hurt you. Jennifer exhaled shakily. I keep trying to tell myself that maybe I misunderstood. Maybe they had a reason. Michael shook his head. Stop making excuses for them. They made a choice. She swallowed, feeling the familiar sting of tears behind her eyes. He was right. They had chosen Claire. They had chosen her kids. They had chosen to lie to Jennifer, to let her children believe that Christmas had to be small and simple, while somewhere else they were celebrating with a tree full of gifts and laughter. That wasn't an accident. That was deliberate. That was a decision. The next day, Jennifer's aunt, Martha, texted her, Your mom's really upset. She doesn't understand why you're being so harsh. Can't you just talk to her? Jennifer stared at the message, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She wanted to scream, to throw her phone across the room, to demand how anyone could think she was the one being harsh. But instead, she took a deep breath and typed her response. She's not upset because she hurt me. She's upset because I finally stood up for myself. And if you can't understand that, then maybe you should stop being her messenger. She hit send, then blocked Martha's number 2. Spring arrived slowly, the snow melting into patches of green as the days grew longer. Jennifer had spent the winter in a kind of limbo, the silence from her parents and sister stretching into weeks, then months. At first, the quiet had felt heavy, like a weight she couldn't shake. But as the weeks passed, she began to notice something else, a lightness, a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. It was late February when her phone buzzed with a message from her aunt, Helen. Jennifer hesitated before opening it. Helen was her father's younger sister, the one who had always been kind but distant, the one who never got involved in family drama. Hey, Jennifer, I know things have been rough for your parents. I just wanted you to know that I see you, and if you and the kids ever want to come over for dinner, my door is always open. Jennifer stared at the screen, her heart tightening. There was no guilt trip, no attempt to manipulate her into reconciliation. Just an offer, an invitation, not an expectation. She thought about it for a long time before replying. That would be really nice. The following weekend, Jennifer and Michael packed Lily and Ethan into the car and drove to Helen's house. It wasn't a mansion like her parents' home, but it was warm and welcoming, filled with the smell of home-cooked food and the sound of laughter. Helen greeted them at the door, her face lighting up. You made it. She bent down, smiling at Lily and Ethan. You two must be freezing. Come inside, I made hot chocolate. The kids instantly adored her, their shyness melting away as they followed her into the kitchen. Jennifer watched them, a lump forming in her throat. Helen led her into the living room where a fire crackled in the fireplace. I know you don't want to talk about it, she said gently, but I just want you to know I don't agree with what they did to you. Jennifer blinked, surprised. They don't even think they did anything wrong? Helen sighed. Of course they don't. That's how they are. They expect everyone to cater to them, to forgive them without accountability. Jennifer nodded, swallowing hard. They didn't just do it to me, they did it to my kids. Helen's eyes softened. And that's why you're doing the right thing. Protecting your kids from people who only love conditionally, that's the best decision you could ever make. Jennifer took a shaky breath. Then why does it still hurt? Because you're a good person, Helen said simply, and good people always hope for better. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is accept that they won't change and stop waiting for them to. Jennifer looked around at Helen's cozy living room, at the way she had welcomed her family with open arms, and realized something. Maybe she hadn't lost family. Maybe she had just found the ones who actually deserved to be called that. The evening was everything Jennifer had once hoped to have with her own parents. Helen's husband, Greg, played board games with Lily and Ethan, laughing as they made up their own rules. Dinner was filled with easy conversation, not the forced small talk Jennifer had grown used to. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she had to prove her worth. As they drove home that night, Jennifer glanced in the rearview mirror at her kids, fast asleep in the back seat. Michael reached over and squeezed her hand. You okay? He asked. Jennifer smiled softly. Yeah, I think I am. Because maybe family wasn't about blood. Maybe it was about who showed up, who loved you without conditions, who made space for you without making you beg for it. Jennifer sits in the quiet of her bedroom that night, her phone silent and her heart lighter. She opens her photo album and deletes the old pictures of her parents and sister one by one, not out of anger, but because she doesn't need them anymore. She's done looking back.